is the end of the grading term. So what that means is the grade that you get after next Thursday, there's no school next Friday, that's going to be the grade on your transcript. So if you're going to college, if you ever need a transcript for the military, or just down the road, you need your high school transcript, the grade that you have in 2 weeks, next Friday, that's going to be the grade that stays on there forever. So keep that in mind. If you're slacking, time to start picking it up. If you have missing stuff, get it in by the end of, like, your chapter 4 stuff needs to be in by Friday. And then after next week, your grade will start over, kind of back at 0, or however you want to interpret that. Speaking of grading, if you turned in anything late this weekend, or on Friday afternoon, it has not been graded. Anything before Friday afternoon, I graded all of that late work already. I'm working now on grading your assignments that were due on Friday, as well as any new late work. So I'm just trying to hopefully get everything done and caught up before going on leave. So that's just kind of where we are now. If you have questions for me, you can ask them now or after class. First thing we're going to do, though, is look at, that's not what you want, that's our class list. Look at the budgets that we did on Thursday. Friday, you did that survey for your attendance. I started reading the results, and I'm going to continue going through those. What is that? And so, okay. So I just wanted to go over each of these budgets because not all groups looked at all of them. You were only assigned one. Some groups opened other ones to compare. But I basically just went through, there were about 4 summaries for each budget. And I went through and kind of took like the main points that each group shared and put them together. So this was budget number 1. I know it's kind of hard to see. I was having a hard time zooming in last period because this is from, oh, there we go. Just kidding. Here we go. So budget number 1, you can see the total monthly income is $2,500. The expenses are $2,720. So that's a balance of negative $220 each month. Kind of the feedback that we got on this one was the cost of entertainment and groceries seemed a bit high. So entertainment here you can see is $300 a month. Groceries are $250 a month. Some other groups said could spend less on personal care, which is $100 a month. And then kind of the big takeaway from this one is if this continues to happen in this trend, this person's going to be in a lot of debt. $220 a month, they're going to have over $2,500 in debt at the end of the year. And that's without putting anything into retirement and savings. So budget number 1 needs some work. You never want your budget to be in the negative. All right. Budget number 2. You can see here that, this person only has a balance of $23 a month. The feedback from this budget is that they are mostly spending on needs. Sorry, like 4 people just came in a little late. So mostly spending on needs, but entertainment is a little bit high. Entertainment is a little bit high. So that could be reduced because they're spending $300 a month on entertainment. They leave little money for themselves, but overall they're making the most of their income. And then they could also, to try to cut costs, use public transportation instead of a car, since they're spending money on gas, a car payment, and car insurance. So that's one way this person could save some money. Budget number 3. You can see here the leftover amount is $135 each month. Also mostly spending on needs, not a lot of spending on wants here, the highest percent. They're putting a decent amount into their retirement and savings. So $450 a month into retirement and $200 a month into savings. Said could possibly reduce grocery spending, which is $200 a month. But overall spending pretty responsibly here. And then this last one, budget number 4, was very different from all the others. So this person was making $2,300 a month, only spending $875 a month, leaving a balance of $1,425. So they're mostly spending on needs. I think one or two groups said spending too much on rent, and another group said not spending too much on rent. It looks like a lot because it's almost half, but they're not spending very much money overall. They have this leftover balance of $1,425. Again, it's not going to retirement or savings, so they're just leaving it in their account. So they should probably start putting some of it away there. And then again, clothing is $10 and cable and internet is $20, and the rest is pretty much needs for, or very minimal, I should say. So I forgot where I was going next on this. I apologize. Yeah, so like I said, this one was very different. You want to make sure you're hopefully able to put some money into retirement and savings. And most importantly, you do not want a negative balance like we saw here on budget number 1. So just real quick, this one had groceries at $250. This one had it at $300. This one was $200. This one was $200. What do you guys think is a realistic amount just for one person for groceries for a month? We're talking like breakfast, lunch, dinner, all your snacks, all the food you're going to eat. Because a lot of groups said that they were kind of high, and I just don't know what you guys would think is more realistic. So thank you for the few of you that have typed it privately. So again, type it to me privately, type it to the class. There's no right or wrong answer. I'm just genuinely curious because most groups said groceries were kind of high, and I didn't think they were. So I was just curious as what you guys thought overall. All right, so I'm getting a lot around 200. There is other numbers out there, but that was kind of the majority. Again, there was no answer that was right or wrong. I was just genuinely curious. And it also depends, right, on where you do your shopping, what you like to eat. So that might be a factor. We know if you shop at Trader Joe's versus Food 4 Less, there's going to be a cost difference. There's a cost difference in Safeway versus Raley's. There's a difference if you eat a lot of frozen stuff versus a lot of fresh stuff. If you buy organic. So there's a lot of factors that go into it. I was just genuinely curious about what you guys thought. Okay, so moving on, we are going to look at this paper. that is posted in Google Classroom and take some notes on here. You do not have to print it, though you can. If you need to access it now, go ahead. Up here, these are the equations we're going to be using to do the math in this chapter. I just put them all up at the top. Today is the 5th. This is period 4. So I'll give you a minute if you need to kind of write some of this down, if you need to print this paper, if you want to open it and type in it. You know what, I think I made it a PDF, so you cannot do that unless you have Adobe. I didn't even think about that, but it's not a whole lot. So this first equation, we're not going to be using these top two today. I think they're both tomorrow. But average monthly expenditures is the sum of the monthly expenditures divided by the number of months. That's to find an average. You add how many you together and divide by how many there were. Total monthly expenses, you add your variable expenses, your fixed expenses, and your shared annual expenses. The shared annual expenses are things that are due like once a year, and you would divide it by 12. And then down next, these parts are a little bit different about the variance. If we're talking about income dollar variance, you do actual income minus budgeted income. But if you're talking about expense dollar variance, you do budgeted expense minus actual expense. Notice the budgeted and actual are reversed on these two. And you'll see why when we do these examples and our next worksheet. But the percent variance, you always take the dollar variance and divide it by the budgeted amount. So here for number 1. At the end of March, the Browns prepared an expense summary. They had planned to spend $220 on groceries. They actually spent $231.85. How much more or less did they spend on groceries than they had budgeted for? What is the percent variance? So this is an expense summary. It's how much money they're spending on groceries. So we're going to do this one for expense. So for the expense dollar variance, we're going to do the budgeted expense. So they had budgeted $220. We're going to subtract $231.85. So 220 minus 231.85. Notice it's negative. So negative $11.85. Someone in the other class asked if it had to be negative. So I'm going to kind of tell you, if you had typed it in this way on your calculator, you would get positive 1185. But if you wrote, say you did 231.85 minus 220, and you got 1185, and said they spent $1185 more than they budgeted, that's the same thing. You know they spent too much money. However, if this is on your test and this is multiple choice, it's going to be written like this. So as long as you understand that if they spent more than they were supposed to, that's negative, I'm fine with that. Hopefully that makes sense. This is what we call an unfavorable variance because it's negative. They spent more than they wanted to spend. That's going to be coming up on the next worksheet. It's going to say, is it unfavorable or favorable? They spent more money than they planned, so that's not good. So the percent variance then is the dollar variance, so the negative 1185, divided by the budgeted amount of $220. So negative 11.85 divided by 220. We're going to round to the nearest percent on these. Remember, percent, you move your decimal 2 places. So 5.4, which stays at 5%. Because after the 5 is a 3. I don't know why I rounded the 3 to an 8. But after the 5 is a 3, so we leave it at 5% there. Negative. I forgot my negative sign. Don't do that. You'll get it wrong. And then here on number 2, it says at the end of November, Josh reviewed his expense summary. He planned to earn $480 by working 12 hours every weekend at Pizza Pirate, but he was only able to get 9 hours of work each weekend. Describe his budget variance if he makes $10 an hour. So we know how much he was planning on making, but we don't know how much he actually made. We have to calculate that. So his income, his actual income here. So each weekend, he only works 9 hours, but he works and makes $10 an hour. So 9 times $10, he's going to make $90 each weekend. Well, so then we're going to say for the month, because we're doing this monthly, there's 4 weekends and he made $90 each weekend. So 4 times 90 is the same as 4 times 9, and then you add the 0. So 4 times 9 is 36 plus the 0. So he's going to make $360 each month. So he planned on making $480, but he only made $360. So the dollar variance here we do the actual income and we subtract the budgeted income. We get negative $120. Again, if you did it the other way around and you said he made $120 less than he planned, that's the same thing in words. Knowing the negative means it's not in his favor. This is unfavorable again. And then to get the percent variance, we take the negative 120 and divide it by the budgeted amount. And we're going to get 25%. Negative again. Geez, don't do that. So he's making 25% less than he thought he was going to make. That's a big difference. Questions on these notes before we look at the worksheet? Okay, so you're going, hang on to this one, you have to submit it, but these examples up or formulas, we're going to use some of those, I think, tomorrow. So this is the other worksheet that you need. Again, you don't have to print it, but you can. And if you're not printing it, that's fine. Copy down these headings for the table, and then you can kind of fill these in as we go if you didn't look at this ahead of time. So I'll give you a minute just to get this out and or typed, written, however you want it.
Is this part of the notes or an assignment itself?
This is your homework. We're just going to get started on it. So this last column is favorable or unfavorable. And you should really, if you understand what's going on in this assignment, you should be able to fill in this column first. So for each of these, this top half is income amounts and the bottom half is expense amounts. We're going to do the dollar variance and percent variance for each of them and determine if it's favorable or unfavorable. So here on the number one, excuse me, we're talking about income, how much money you make. Let's say you planned on making $200 in your paycheck, but you actually made $220. Is that favorable or unfavorable? And you can just write an F or a U. And what do you think? Type it in the chat for me, please. So is that favorable or unfavorable? You planned on making $200 on your paycheck, but you made $220. Do we think that's favorable or unfavorable? Again, and you can just type F or U. So this is favorable, which most of you said. A few people said unfavorable. The reason being, you made more money than you planned on making. That works in your favor. Here, let's say you planned on making $500, but you only made $400. Is that favorable or unfavorable? Yeah, getting a lot of U's. Anytime you make less than you planned on making, that doesn't work in your favor. You're going to be short. You might not be able to pay all your bills now. So you could fill in this first column here. Again, if you're not too sure, I can try to go over it again after. But then, so for the dollar variance, anytime it's favorable, it's positive. Anytime it's unfavorable, these are going to be negative. You know that right off the bat. So here, you planned on making $200, you made $220. So the dollar variance is $20. You made $20 more than you planned on making. What, baby? Okay, sorry. So again, 220 minus 200 is $20, or you just think about it. I made $20 more. To get the percent variance then, you do 20 divided by the budgeted amount of 200. Notice this says 0.1. You move your decimal 2 places. So this is 10%. Do not write 1%. It will be marked wrong. Always 2 decimal places for your percent. For this next one, again, you planned on making 500, you only made 400. If you understand the favorable or unfavorable, I'm going to show you. If you do 400 minus 500, you get negative 100. If you do 500 minus 400, you get positive 100. Either way, it's $100, but you know just by doing the thinking up front that it has to be negative because it's unfavorable. So it doesn't really matter what way you subtract. Sorry, I'm not sure why this is not focusing so much now. It doesn't really matter what way you do your subtraction as long as you understand the idea that if it's unfavorable, it's going to be negative. So to do your percent then, you would just do negative 100 divided by 500. Again, it's kind of hard to see here, but it's negative 0.2, so negative 20%. Then down here at the bottom, so that's how you do the top half. Down here at the bottom, same idea except expenses. Let's say this is your PG&E bill. You thought your PG&E bill was going to be $200, but it was $220. Is that favorable or unfavorable? Again, you thought your bill was $200. It actually came and you had to pay $220. Yeah, so this is unfavorable. So notice number 1 and 8, they're the same numbers. Here it was favorable, here it was unfavorable. Because on number 1, you're talking about how much money you make. You're okay making more money, but it's not okay to spend more money because you might not have enough money for it. So the dollar variance again here, this is negative $20. 200 minus 220 is going to be negative 20. And then same idea, if I did the percent in the dividing, it's going to be the same numbers, but it's negative for this one. Negative 20 divided by 200. I get negative 0.10 or negative 10%. What about this one? You thought your water bill was going to be $255. It was $225. Is that favorable or unfavorable? Yeah, it looks like most people agree that's favorable. You're not spending as much money as you thought you were going to have to spend. So this is the rest of your homework, and you have these 2 bottom questions. List 3 sources of income, 3 expenses. If this is, you understand what you're doing, this is your homework, you are free to go. I'll see you tomorrow at 2. If you are still confused and want me to do 1 or 2 more, stick around and I will gladly do that for you.